right, Ian, welcome to the Founding AE podcast. I'm super excited to have you on today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. I'm particularly excited about this episode because if you've seen our podcast before, we have a lot of founding AEs on and folks that are currently in the role. And what I understand about you is that you're a multiple time founding AE. So you really know the role in and out, but also you've now started your own business where you actually help founders lay the groundworks for making that first sales hire, which we know is maybe one of the most challenging early hires that you have to make. Definitely one of the most expensive in a way, right? Like you have to put your money where your mouth is for the first time in terms of bringing on this resource. So getting it right, making sure that you're hiring the right person, but also laying down the foundation for them to be successful is so critically important. And that's what you do. So I'm really excited to pick your brain, share with the rest of the community these insights on how we can all best prepare for bringing on the founding AE resource.
Yeah. Well, it's anyone who's been a founding AE probably is like, why would anyone want to be a 3-time founding AE with the amount of like stress and punishment you go through? But I don't know. I'm kind of attracted to that stuff. It's fun to be in the figured out mode, and you just can't really recreate the energy of an early stage startup. So yeah, for better, for worse, it just keeps drawing me back. And now I have a different relationship with it, of course, like helping founders de-risk those early sales hires, but it's still revolving around all the same stuff. So
yeah, I feel like there's certain people that are made for it, and they, definitely there's people that will do the role and then move on to other things, but there's definitely people that becomes their thing, right? They want to be the first sales hire, or in your case, even build a business around that concept of being the first sales hire. But before we dig too much deep into all that great stuff, maybe we take a step back for those that aren't familiar with you. Maybe you can give us a little walkthrough of your career background and how you came to start Stompbox. And then we can dig into the specifics about what you're offering and also the role. But yeah, would love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Totally. So I love origin stories. Mine is not nearly as exciting as like a Marvel character, but I'll try to spice it up for you. So it's 2013. I'm graduating college, and somehow I managed to spend like 3.5 years avoiding the big question of what am I going to do with my career? What am I going to do with my life after college? I generally had 2 options. One was to go work at a regional bank, very stable, good career path. But just for me personally, I was just picturing like being in a cubicle in some type of soul-sucking situation. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. The other option was to go work at this startup that a friend of mine started out of his dorm room. I just met this guy, and he had one client, one customer, no funding. And I thought, well, that sounds like a great use of my education. I'm going to jump into that. And I didn't know how to code, and I was his first employee. So I realized my job was sales. Like that's, you're either building the thing or you're selling the thing in early stage stuff. So yeah, moved into my uncle's basement with like a dog and a snake. I remember like we're also living in this basement. It was like a very wonderful place to live, but I enjoyed painting an ominous picture there. But yeah, so my first job out of college was that first employee job at a B2B SaaS company. And over the next 10 years, worked at a total of 3 companies selling all kinds of stuff to different kinds of people. So the first company was selling mobile apps to tourism directors and executive pastors at churches. So 2 very niche markets. We grew that from 0 to 5 million in ARR in about 5 years, about 50 employees or so. Saw the writing on the wall, realized there's not really room to grow in either of these two markets. So our founder sold the company, and we took that cash and started a new business. So kept the same team, but the new business was in the employee engagement HR tech space, targeting HR leaders and CEOs of companies anywhere from 100 employees to 10,000 employees. So just a little bit different. Almost felt like a more grown-up market to be selling into, and had a similar growth trajectory. So we grew to about 5 or 6 million in ARR, but in about half that time of the first company. So about 3, maybe 2.5 years. So that company got acquired by a performance management company, and then my third stint was at a company in life sciences selling to brain leaders in life sciences. So I share all that mostly because whenever I hear people say like, oh, how you sell to this market or this market is, there's unique differences. There always are, for sure, but there's there's principles behind all of it that are really timeless, and they're industry agnostic. And I was very, very, very fortunate to have good sales coaching early in my career. I don't think I would be in this career anymore if I didn't have access to that. So that's how I spent the first 10 years of my career, kind of this like taking what the founder was doing and taking the baton and just running with it, and trying to go create magic without having the founders, cheat codes almost. And that ultimately led me to start Stompbox to help kind of solve that problem in a repeatable way for companies at that inflection point. So
Very cool. Yeah, quite the journey. And like you said, multiple time founding salesperson, you got to have a passion for it, and just that curiosity to keep doing it and keep improving. Let's dig a little deeper into that problem. So through those different experiences that you had, it sounds like you identified a problem that got you to the idea of Stompbox. What was it? What were you seeing in those roles that led to the almost like aha moment where it's like, oh, you know what? I think there's like a repeatable problem to solve here between the founder sort of doing that founder-led sales and then that salesperson being fully operational and sort of running with the baton, as you said.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to kind of describe the problem, but at the 30,000 foot level, it's like 70% of first sales hires don't make it to 12 months. So they either quit or get fired in the first year. I actually think it's probably higher than 70%, but I think most founders aren't particularly excited about reporting that they're like 0 for 4 on sales hires. Yeah, but it's this like, it's not just, oh, a hire didn't work out. It's the type of problem that can like kill a startup, because it's the founder is handing over the wheel to someone. It usually goes fairly well in the first few months because they're kind of tag teaming stuff. But at some point, that salesperson gets isolated. They don't have the support they need. And everyone starts to question, like, are they going to turn the corner, including the salesperson? And they don't really know how to ask for help necessarily, especially if this is their like first time doing it, So yeah, I think the way to put it is like they leave and the founder ends up getting pulled back into sales and has to go recreate all that momentum. But in that time, they've maybe burned up some runway. They've lost what kind of the thing that was working for them. And it's sort of just like they get put back in time, and they maybe can't afford to make that mistake, especially more than once. So so that's the gist. That's the problem I'd say we see. And in my world, like when I was doing it myself, I think I just enjoyed the work, like the less so getting it to a rinse and repeat stage, but more just like the creative aspect of connecting dots and being like, okay, how can I, Ian over here from a brand no one's heard of, selling a product that they don't have a budget for, right? Like, how can I get someone to reply to an email? And then how can I get them to set a meeting with me? And then how can I get them to not just nod and go like, well, hey, we're rooting for you. It's like you get burned at each stage of this process. So that figuring out how to do that is like this little fun challenge. And then once it starts working, that's where I tended to get bored. And like, that's why like I was never the like rinse and repeat enterprise AE who could just, close deals for 10 years into the sunset. Because I would kind of like over tweak and get bored because I liked the figuring it out part, So,
yeah, that resonates with me. I think I'm very, very similar. I always think of it as like building, like you said, you and we're not engineers, right? We don't code. So when it comes to like building sales engines, motions, right? Figuring out how to connect those dots is building for us. And once you stop building and you start sort of like just kind of doing the playbook, that's where maybe it isn't as interesting or doesn't give us the energy. Really interesting to hear about sort of that problem that you see in these organizations, and I can totally see it. I guess now kind of turning to Stompbox, right, specifically. So how do you guys help founders solve that problem? And also, when do you come in? When's the right time for you to come in? Are you usually coming in when somebody has gone through that and figuring out how to get them back on track? Or are you managing to get in actually before these founders go through that painful process of bringing on maybe the wrong person or maybe the right person, but without the right toolkit to make them successful, and then helping them avoid those challenges?
Yeah. That's the $1 million question, really, because I started Stompbox 3 years ago. It's just myself and a business partner right now, and we're having a lot of fun. But initially, I was thinking, oh gosh, I've done this 3 times myself. I can help them de-risk this transition. So our messaging initially was like, hey, before you make your first sales hire, call Stompbox. Let's just have a conversation. And then we'll, and I was kind of thinking that's our entry point. We still definitely do a lot of business with companies who are almost in that like vitamin stage where they're like, we can share the cautionary tale. They get the idea of, okay, I could de-risk that, avoid a lot of problems, streamline the learnings, all that stuff. But more than not, like most of the work we do is with clients that have already been through that journey. And they're like, I have tried to hire 2 salespeople or 3 salespeople. I've spent $500,000 trying to figure that out. And I will not do it unless I have a plan. And I'm realizing I'm not I, for whatever reason, know how to sell, like through my magnetism, my credibility, all these kind of things as the founder, but I do not know how to manage salespeople. Like there's something different. I can't figure it out. So they have this like overwhelming pain. And that's when people will usually find us, or they'll come back to us and be like, hey, you were right. That was harder than I expected. So, mostly we just don't push it. We're just like, hey, we'll just kind of help anyone for free and just share kind of our experience and give some tips. And then if it gets to the point where they're like, we need some real hands-on help, that's when we just get involved. So, yeah,
it makes sense. I mean, I feel like on the surface, people are like, how hard can this be, right? Just hire a good salesperson. And then they have to go through that pain to realize, there's a lot more to this. So I could see how people kind of need to feel that pain from vitamin to like actual painkiller, right? Before they want to engage. But it would be much better for everybody involved, I think,
Yeah.
if they brought you guys in earlier. But tell us maybe a little bit about, okay, so a founder brings you on now.
Yep.
Generally, what are you seeing, and what are the things that you're like putting together for them to get them back on track and towards hiring that
Yeah.
founding AE in a more successful way?
Yeah. So the big three. So what we help with is kind of the opposite side of the mistakes that founders get stuck in. And usually what'll happen is they'll either hire a salesperson too early, so before the business is ready.
Yep.
And within that, like we have kind of a quick checklist of like, are you actually ready to start thinking about your first sales hire? For us, it's three things. One is their ICP crystal clear, not just can the founder pontificate about it, but could their whole team, like if we ask them, who are you targeting? What are their pain points? Like, would it be pretty clear across their co-founders or whoever they're working with? Secondly, do they have customers? That's because sometimes it's like, especially with technical founders, they'll think, okay, we built this perfect, great product. Maybe we've even like validated it with some feedback, but we haven't sold it yet. So they'll think, I need to go turn on sales. I'll go find a salesperson. And in my mind, that's a bit of a red flag, purely because I just believe that's the founder's job. Like, I think that's the job of the entrepreneur, is to go figure out, not just does someone like this idea, but would somebody pay money to solve this problem? And I would almost go as far to say, like, if a founder is looking for a salesperson to sell their first client ever, or customer ever, I would maybe, and that salesperson can do that. I wonder if that salesperson should go start their own business. And, I just think it's a founder's job. So that's the second thing. Do they have customers, and are they staying, and are they retaining? And that helps us test, like, it's one thing to get a yes. It's one thing for somebody to say, I love that promise, I'm in. It's another thing for that promise to be delivered on, and for that person to retain. So that's the second piece. And then the third is, there's a third. I promise there's a third. So for the founder, is their own calendar full of selling? I think sometimes it'll be, hey, we were selling well, and then we got busy, and now my calendar's dried up, and I'm going to hire a salesperson to go turn sales back on. Like, in my mind, a great time to hire a salesperson is when your calendar as the founder is so full of qualified meetings that they're starting to slip through the cracks. Like, that's totally. If I'm and in particular, if there's like, founding AEs out there considering signing on for a job or whatever, like, that's something I would be looking for. Like, go work for a company that has momentum and is looking for you to continue it, as opposed to a company that's like, we're at a standstill, but you seem like a great person who's got a lot of energy, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was all just to share the timing of like where it makes sense to maybe make a sales hire. As far as what we do in that whole process, is we'll come build a sales system that can actually scale. So we will listen to sales calls, listen to how the founder is selling. We'll talk to their team, talk to their customers, and we'll basically translate that into something that a salesperson could execute. So we'll take all the, like, oh, there's some founder magic that can't scale. And then there's some stuff that can, because it's really problem focused. It's really focused on running a tight discovery and how they're starting and ending meetings, all these little tactical stuff. So we'll build out that sales system. We will help them identify and vet who what would be a good salesperson for this role, which we can talk about that too, like what's kind of on the list. And then we'll onboard them. We'll help de-risk that first 90 days. So that's generally how we help. You had asked about one other thing I wanted to go back to. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So as far as like the timing of like, when are you, what are the mistakes CEOs, founders make when they're making that first sales hire? The first is they hire too early.
Yep.
The second is there's a mismatch in sales experience. So
okay. Yeah.
I think one of the most common things I see is like, they feel like they need to go hire a really accomplished salesperson who's currently working at like HubSpot, right?
Yeah.
And that person wants to roll up their sleeves and get into startup land.
Totally.
And they think it's a match made in heaven. So it's like this, and it's just a ticking time bomb, honestly, because that person, even though they might be talented, has been selling with the HubSpot brand behind them,
Yep.
Totally.
And sales enablement and marketing. I mean, all the resources, right, to pair them. I've seen that mistake many, many times.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's like really expensive. I mean, to attract that type of person,
yep.
It's either cash or equity, and either way it's going to hurt, So that's the other piece. And then the third would be like dropping the ball during onboarding. So they hire too early, hire the wrong person, or they drop the baton because they feel like this salesperson is off and running, and then they kind of lose sight of what's happening, and it all starts to unwind.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on two of those pieces. So first, finding the right person, right? We talked about seniority, maybe like that need for some reason to hire somebody that seems super senior and, has been at a bigger brand, not being the right profile person. There's also the question of like, how junior do you go? In a way, I find that if I think back to when I was first a founding AE, I actually found that the fact that I was pretty green and I didn't know the magnitude of what I was taking on was actually a little bit of a competitive advantage. Like now, I don't know if I could have done what I did, some of the things that I did back then. But there is probably like an in between, right? Like between a super senior person and a really fresh person that doesn't even, know how to be a professional. This is their first job. What do you look for? You mentioned you have a checklist. I think I saw on your website that there's actually maybe a resource on this.
Yeah, there is.
What does that person look like? And also, one layer that I'd love to ask on it is like industry experience required. Is being having been a founding AE before something that is a plus? Like, I would love to hear your thoughts on these things.
Yeah. Okay, so who is that person? How do you strike the balance? So we'll just start like, what are the most common things people do? They go hire someone who's got all the credibility in the world, and that person doesn't work out because they're overqualified. Maybe have their own like hot takes and opinions on what's going to work and what's not. So for instance, not to pick on HubSpot, let's pick on Salesforce. Let's make them upset. So, that salesperson at Salesforce might be like, hey, cold calling doesn't work, for instance. And for me personally, that is how I have probably set most of my meetings in my career, is cold calling. But if I'm at Salesforce and have had a lot of leads handed to me, then I might have that perspective. And I also hate getting cold called. So it's easy to have that perspective. If someone is early in their career, they are not going to come in with a bunch of opinions. So I think what's important is that they are coachable. And you can test that during the interview, by the way. Like, you can give them, put them on the spot if you want to, like, ask them, hey, how would you position my product to the market. Like if you were cold calling me, let's role play it. And then they're going to fumble. But if they try it, that's cool. Like, I think it's cool if somebody's like, all right, I don't know, let's just wing it. And then you can give them feedback and say, hey, can I give you 1 or 2 tips? And then we'll do it again. And just seeing if someone's willing to just play along, even though they're going to fumble. And then B, if they're actually able to take that quick feedback and improve. I think that's a pretty, like, not a surefire way to test if someone coachable, but it's a way to see, are they humble? Are they going to push back on my feedback? Whatever. So the reason I would say that early career is my preference most of the time is that they're ready to like prove it and roll up their sleeves. I will give you an example of a friend of mine who he was a physical therapist for 4 or 5 years. People keep telling him he'd do really well in a sales job. He kind of hit his ceiling as a physical therapist. And he was just like, I don't know how to get into a sales job. I've applied to a bunch of roles. I'm 7 months in and no one will. So he's kind of like proving that he has the commitment to succeed.
Yeah.
And he's so ready to roll up his sleeves and show what he's capable of. He's just like, put me in, coach, like tell me what to do. I don't know if making 60 cold calls a day is hard or not, but I'll do it. There's just people who they don't have a lot of resistance to the sales activity. Like another example is a guy that I hired maybe 7 years ago. His previous job was working in a warehouse. So we'd been able to test like, okay, does he have good writing skills, communication skills? Yes. That's all great. And then we got to like the actual job of sales, right? So we had run into this problem of, because we were in the employee engagement space, the HR tech space, our companies, people always want to talk about the culture and the mission, and all that's great. But what we really needed to hear is that they were okay with like making 60 cold calls a day, because that was the actual job, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not okay with that, you're going to flame out in like a month, So I remember we tested that with him and we're like, hey, how does that sound? How does that sit with you? And he's like, if you're telling me I can sit down at a computer when I'm making these calls, like I will literally do anything. Like there's nothing you can ask me to do that I would be afraid of or whatever. Like I don't want to move boxes from one side of a warehouse to the other side of the warehouse anymore. So it's just like a different perspective on life almost.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm for your audience. I'm like getting over a cold living in my head right now. So I'm just like stream of consciousness right now. I hope that's okay.
No, it's good stuff. No, I totally see what you're saying. And that's why I think it's been my experience as well that industry experience isn't the most important thing, right? And even sales experience isn't the most important thing. It's these like intangibles, if you will, for this early stage role. I'm not saying, if you're selling it, getting hired at IBM as like a middle manager, sales leader or something like that, it's totally different, right?
Yeah, so
but yeah, those intangibles. Yeah.
Clarification. So I would say another common hiring mistake is when people hire, especially a founding AE, for their Rolodex. So that like for their connections in that industry, they're like, oh, this person is super connected. And it almost, it works for like 4 months. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Then their connections run out.
Yeah.
In that time, they did not build up. They didn't like figure out their sales process. They just hustled to drum up their connections, right? So it's almost like it was this false positive of this is going to work. So to me, that's like the wrong kind of industry experience. If it's just hiring someone for like, there's a bunch of, yellow flags about this person or red flags, but they have industry connections. Let's do it. That's just like punting your problem down the road. good industry experience for me would be like, okay, we're working in, let's use that physical therapist example. Guy has no sales experience, but he's a physical therapist, maybe working at a health tech startup where he like knows the language.
Yeah.
Where that type of industry experience, I think, is really interesting and helpful, where somebody does have a bit of a personal story in the industry, as opposed to just them like just having connections. That's going to run out. That's not a strategy. That's just like a ticking time bomb kind of.
Yeah, it sounds like industry experience is not a cover for red flags or yellow flags, right? It's not something to say, but they have industry experience, so let's go with this person. But if they check the box on everything else and they have industry experience, it could be a real strong suit. Is what it sounds like. I have one other question, because I think this is a piece that doesn't get talked about a lot, and where you maybe have a unique vantage point. So let's say we found what we believe is the best candidate for the role. We brought them on board. The piece that I think not a lot of people think about is that onboarding and what that looks like. How do we set this person up for success, right? So I'd love to hear what you usually would want the onboarding process to look like, how long it should be, what should be in place for this person to get ramped up. And then the final piece to that is, when's the right time to sort of be like, is this working or is this not? What are the signals? Because I do think as well, maybe sometimes it's unfair for the founding AE. People are expecting them to make magic, and sometimes it happens, right? I actually have a founding AE that was on our podcast a little while ago. He joined at exactly the right time. The founder was overwhelmed with amount of demos, and I mean, immediately hitting the ground running, is closing these deals and beating their quota and so on. It happens, but also there is an argument to make sure that the person has the time to get settled into the role and all that stuff. So yeah, would love to hear what that onboarding experience should look like in the best way possible, and then what the expectations should be. When are we looking for the impact, and kind of what are these signals?
Yeah. Awesome question. This is where everything falls apart. You can do everything right up until this point, and then you just kind of like feel like the salesperson is off and running, and you go spend time elsewhere, and all of a sudden, if something goes wrong, there's nothing to fix. Like, how do you fix it if you don't have data points? So onboarding, I would say like a classic 30, 60, 90 plan makes sense. I am a big fan of, I guess that the typical thing we see is over-indexing on product knowledge and under-indexing on sales activity or sales coaching, sales training, sales experience, just selling. So it's so that's like the first thing. It's like, don't have your salesperson spend their first month talking to the customer success team, doing a tour of all the departments, like learning all the terminology. You actually said it perfectly, Justin, like how the beginner's luck of like not knowing everything is a real thing. Like there's it's called the dummy curve in one of the methodologies. I don't know if it's Sandler or Spin or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But that's the dummy curve. Like, I think the best thing I feel like is when a salesperson is like, challenged to almost like do something in the market, make a cold call, try to set a meeting, in the first like week, honestly. Like you're not gonna, that's not gonna backfire. I think what will backfire is waiting a month, waiting 2 months. And it's like building up this tension of like, how's it going to go? So I'm a big fan of that. Start market facing activity in week 1. Have a scorecard. I think this is probably the number one tool that could solve most like problems. Like what does a good week look like as a salesperson at this company who's onboarding? because depending on the company, because the devil's in the details. Like one company has one call close type deals. Another company has 8-month sales cycle selling into enterprise healthcare or something, So it's like, how, if a sales rep is not closing a deal every single week, well, what are the other things that are telling us they're on the right track or on the wrong track? And that's where a scorecard is really helpful. So a good scorecard is like, to me, it's inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So inputs are like, what's, if we just throw all the terminology out the window and just go, okay, what's the experiment we're running? What's, like, we're trying to set a meeting. What do we think that cookbook is? It might be making this many dials. It might be sending this many LinkedIn DMs. It might be going to these events. Whatever that is for that company, that should be like set as a weekly goal. Those are the inputs. And at the end of the week, those inputs, I'm a big fan of like manually tracking what did I do this week? I don't want that stuff like automated into HubSpot, because then it's not reviewed. Like, I'm a big fan of a physical piece of paper is pretty hard to track, but like a spreadsheet, a shared spreadsheet where the sales rep has to self-report activity, and then review it, think through it, and then also track output. So maybe they like, maybe input is I'm making this many calls this week. And the output is I set 3 meetings. And the week before I set 0 meetings, but did twice the activity over here. So, it's like you can learn insights from data. And then the outcome obviously is like, what's the business outcome? Did that, because one thing that can happen pretty easily is like, okay, I found the people who are easy to set a meeting with, and they are not at all someone who can buy our product, but I'm comfortable prospecting them, for instance. And that I learned that the really hard way selling into HR. Like, scorecard, having a 30, 60, 90 plan, and really just having like treating it as apprenticeship a little bit, where instead of going, okay, your job is to, as quickly as possible, take over the whole sales process. Instead, it's like taking over chunk by chunk. Like if you go back to that, what we were saying earlier, like, can I get a reply to a LinkedIn DM?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get an email reply? Can I set a meeting? Can I set a proposal meeting where the founder joins, and et cetera, et cetera. So like it's almost unlocking parts of the sales process as opposed to trying to do it all at once. And all of this goes back to like having a sales system that is already ready for a salesperson to onboard to.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ticket with all of this. Like, if you don't have that sales system dialed in, or it's never going to be perfect. Like, it's always dynamic and evolving. But if you don't have like, this is basically scalable. Someone has told me this can scale beyond me, the founder. If you don't have that, then you're just going to be like winging it, so.
Makes sense. Great. And I think you also have a scorecard on your website, right? So two of the things that you mentioned today, the checklist and the scorecard, if folks watching or listening find that interesting, there are templates at stompbox.io, right, that they can access.
Absolutely.
This has been awesome, Ian. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think, again, this is a topic that maybe isn't talked about enough in terms of the mistakes that people make, hiring too early, hiring too senior, not, dropping the baton, as you said, during the onboarding process. If folks are listening to this and either they are about to make that first hire and they're like, well, maybe I should talk to Ian first, even just to like get his feedback on if we're ready or what we should be thinking about. Or like you said, they've done it one zero for one, 0 to 2 for 2, 0 for 3, and they're like, okay, we need Ian and team's help. Where's the best place to get in touch with you guys to learn more about Stompbox? I think we mentioned the website, but it also, I think you're pretty active on LinkedIn. Is that a good place to reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn and send me a DM. I'm really manual with all this stuff. So someday AI will take over my life and yours and everyone else's. And but today it's just me. I'll hit reply and we can chat. There's also a good resource on our website that's like a before you hire. Here's the checklist of from your strategy to your sales process to your sales playbook to your practices, which is really the culture you're creating. Like, what are the questions you got to answer or have a good answer to before you hire? So that's a free resource. It's ungated, so you don't have to even tell us who you are to use it. So yeah, we're and I want to, if I can add like one quick thing here.
Yeah.
That I always sometimes can forget to say, like, I think the biggest part of sales, like the thing that draws me to sales in the first place is this idea that there is a status quo and the bar is really low out there. Like, people are just spraying and praying, sending generic outbound, running forgettable demos. And so like the bar is low. And if you can simply be better than that, like that is a competitive advantage. It doesn't just have to be that your product is awesome and that you know, everyone wants a product that'll sell itself. I've never had that. Like, I've never had the momentum of like, oh, I just take orders now because the product's so good. Like, we had to get good at selling. And the very best salespeople, in my opinion, are high integrity, abundance mindset, servant minded. Like, they're focused on helping others. So my like big plea for anyone out there listening is like, if you're thinking about getting into sales, but the ickiness of it like throws you off, like, don't let that keep you from this career, because you're actually the right person that needs to be in this career. So that's my soapbox. Like, I'm off of it now, but
No, it's such a great point, and to be honest, it's something that I think you and I can feel we have in common. I never thought about a career in sales. I never was necessarily interested in sales. I had it, like you said, a bad, maybe a negative perspective on what sales and selling was. I wanted to build stuff and build things from the ground up, and sales was my way in to do that. And in the process, I found that like I was successful because of a lot of things that you said, right? It wasn't that I was, being necessarily a like manipulative sales guy that was persuading people in a direction they didn't want to go, right? That's not what made me successful. It was that I was curious and I was diligent and I was there delivering on the things that I had promised, right? And some of the a lot of the relationships, right, that I had, or the sales that I made early on are people that I'm friends with, and I have relationships to this day. So the relationship side, I think, was really, really strong, and it takes a certain persona to do that, personality. And as you mentioned, I think that is a huge advantage for the founding AE as well. The point that you made, as these companies that you're competing with get bigger and bigger, that bar of their sales team and their the people that they have on their team, there's a risk that it gets lower, right, for them. So as that founding AE that has that integrity, that curiosity, that drive, right, that's your unique advantage, right, to really compete against the established players. So if you have those qualities, this role might be just right for you.
100%. Yeah, you just pictured buying a used car. No one's excited to go talk to the salesperson, but if that salesperson ends up being refreshingly saving you time, being honest, transparent, telling the truth, and you leave like with a positive experience, it's that easy. Like, you just have to, you don't get sucked down to the status quo because the bar is so low. Like I think that's what everybody's trying to just automate their whole sales career. And it's like, no, just be the person who is preparing, delivering on promises, like you said. It's, in one sense, it's really, really simple, but it's hard because it requires almost like this daily renewing of the mind. Like, okay, I'm not going to go into scarcity mode, even though I have to hit quota. Like, that's the tension that every salesperson is fighting. So.
Yeah, well, Ian, this has been great. We'll have to do another episode because I think this is going to get even more important with AI. So maybe in 6 months or so, we can revisit and be like, as I said, I think AI is going to make that spray and pray, even more common. So those that take that more relationship-driven approach are going to stick out. So let's regroup in 6 months or so and see what else we can bring to the table in terms of how to stand out and be a strong founding AE. But this has been awesome today. Thanks so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day over there. And hope you get over that cold. Hope you heal.
Thank you. Back. Thanks. I love what you're building. I'm a big fan of your podcast. So thanks for having me on.